In September 1991, two hikers crossing the Ötzi Alps on the border between Austria and Italy spotted something protruding from a melting glacier at 3,210 meters above sea level. They assumed it was a lost mountaineer. They radioed the authorities. A recovery team arrived, and when they looked closer, they found not a modern casualty, but something that would rearrange our understanding of prehistoric Europe entirely. The body was so well preserved that the first investigators on the scene considered it a recent death. The skin was intact. The hair was still attached. It was only when the body reached the laboratory that the full weight of what had been found began to settle over the scientific community, like the ice that had protected this man for millennia. Carbon dating confirmed it. This was not a medieval man. This was not a Bronze Age wanderer. This man had died somewhere between 3,350 and 3,100 BCE. He had been lying in that glacier, perfectly mummified, for more than 5,000 years. He had been preserved while the pyramids were being planned. He was already 1,000 years dead when Stonehenge was completed. He was given a name, Ötzi, after the Ötzi Alps where he was found. And from the moment he entered the laboratory, he became the most studied human being who ever lived. But here is the question that haunts this story. Ötzi did not wander up to 3,210 meters and lie down to die. His body told a story of violence. And in 2001, after a decade of analysis, an X-ray revealed something that changed everything. There was an arrowhead lodged in his left shoulder. It had been driven in from behind. The subclavian artery had been severed. Ötzi had not succumbed to the cold. He had been shot in the back, from distance, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. He had bled out within minutes. Whoever killed him had not taken his copper axe, had not stripped his belongings. This was targeted. This was intentional. This was, by every definition that forensic science can offer, a murder. The world's oldest known homicide. And the case has never been closed. The autopsy of Ötzi is not a single event. It is a 40-year process, a continuous unfolding of data as technology advances and the questions deepen. Begin with the arrowhead. The shaft of the arrow was not present when the body was found. The attacker had pulled it out. This is significant. Removing an arrow shaft while leaving the head embedded in bone takes effort. It signals awareness, intent, and a desire to obscure evidence. 5,000 years ago, someone was thinking about covering their tracks. The entry wound tells us more. The arrow entered from behind and below, at an angle suggesting the shooter stood at lower elevation than Ötzi. He was struck while moving uphill or standing above his attacker on the slope. He did not see it coming. The subclavian artery, once severed, produced rapid and catastrophic blood loss. Ötzi fell forward into the rocky hollow where he was found. He did not get up. His final meal was consumed between 30 and 60 minutes before his death. Isotope analysis identified ibex meat, red deer, einkorn wheat, and bracken fern. This is not the meal of a starving, fleeing man. This is a full, calm meal eaten shortly before death. His hands tell another story. The right hand shows wounds on the palm and between the fingers, defensive injuries sustained when a hand is raised against an incoming blade. These wounds were not fresh at the time of death. They were healing, which places them at least several days before he died. Ötzi had been in a fight. He had survived that fight, and then the violence found him again. He was approximately 45 years old, a relatively old man by Copper Age standards. He suffered from arteriosclerosis. His knees showed wear consistent with a lifetime of mountain travel. He carried Borrelia burgdorferi, the bacterium responsible for Lyme disease, making him the earliest known case in human history. He had intestinal parasites, gallstones, and growth interruption marks on his fingernails, biological timestamps of repeated physical trauma. This was a man who had lived hard, and yet he was climbing at 3,210 meters, moving purposefully through the high alpine passes. The question that forensic archaeology cannot fully answer is the one that matters most. Why was he there, and who followed him? To understand who killed Ötzi, you have to understand who Ötzi was. And that is where the DNA becomes essential. When scientists first extracted genetic material from his preserved tissue, they were not certain what they would find. But the technology of ancient DNA analysis had advanced enough to make meaningful extraction possible. And what the genome revealed was unexpected in ways that continue to reverberate through European prehistory. Ötzi belonged to a genetic lineage that is, today, essentially extinct as a distinct population. His closest modern relatives are found in Sardinia, an island population that has been geographically isolated for thousands of years, preserving genetic signatures that disappeared from mainland Europe long ago. He was not an ancestor of modern Central Europeans. He represented a branch of early Neolithic farmers, people who had arrived in Europe from Anatolia in a wave of agricultural migration that began around 9,000 years ago. His Y chromosome placed him in haplogroup G2A, widespread among early European farmers, but now rare on the continent. His mitochondrial DNA placed him in haplogroup K1AF, a lineage that has not been identified in any other modern or ancient individual. Ötzi's maternal line is extinct. Whatever children he may have fathered, his mother's genetic line ended. He is, in a precise and literal sense, a dead end. More recent whole genome analysis, conducted in 2023 using updated sequencing technology, revised the earlier picture further. The new data confirmed that Ötzi had dark skin, dark eyes, and a genetic predisposition to baldness. The popular image of a light-skinned Copper Age European needed to be abandoned. The 2023 study also confirmed extremely high levels of Anatolian farmer ancestry, with minimal contribution from the Western hunter-gatherer populations that had inhabited Europe before the farming migration. His community was not one that mixed extensively with the indigenous people already there. They had arrived, settled, and maintained their genetic distinctiveness with surprising fidelity. And then there is the copper axe. Copper metallurgy in 3300 BCE was cutting-edge technology, the social equivalent of a rare weapon in the modern world. To possess such an axe marked its holder as a person of consequence. Experimental archaeology has confirmed that it is a devastatingly effective weapon. The fact that Ötzi's axe was not taken by his killer rules out robbery. It points to something personal. The prevailing theory is that Ötzi was a community leader, possibly a shaman or chieftain, involved in a conflict with a rival group or faction. The ambush in the high pass was not opportunistic. It was planned. Ötzi's story does not end with his murder. It ends somewhere much larger, in what his existence tells us about the world he lived in. For most of the 20th century, European prehistory was imagined as relatively peaceful. Stone Age hunter-gatherers, followed by Neolithic farmers, each transition slow and gradual, the result of ideas spreading calmly from one group to the next. The violence in prehistory, when acknowledged at all, was treated as exceptional. Ötzi shattered that picture, and he was not alone. The Eylau massacre in modern Germany, dated to approximately 2600 BCE, revealed skeletal remains of families killed together in careful burial arrangements that implied both deliberate violence and communal grief. The Aspern-Schletz site in Austria showed evidence of mass killing at a scale suggesting organized warfare, not raiding. The Talheim death pit contained at least 34 individuals killed with stone adzes and deposited in a mass grave. Neolithic Europe, the Europe of Ötzi's world, was not a peaceful garden. It was a landscape of competing communities, scarce resources, territorial claims, and organized violence. The farming revolution had brought not only grain and livestock, but also the hierarchies and rivalries that make large-scale conflict inevitable. What the ancient DNA revolution has done across 30 years of accelerating discovery is replace a story of peaceful continuity with something messier and more honest. European populations were not stable, gradual successions. They were the product of migrations, displacements, and in some cases near total replacement. The hunter-gatherers who had inhabited Europe for tens of thousands of years did not fade gently. In many regions, genomic evidence suggests their populations collapsed, replaced by the incoming farmers whose descendants included Ötzi. And those farming populations were themselves largely replaced by later steppe pastoralists from the Pontic-Caspian region, beginning around 3000 BCE, a migration that would ultimately contribute more than half the ancestry of most modern Europeans. Ötzi lived and died in the compressed space between two of these great demographic upheavals. He was a man of the in-between, a representative of a world already passing away without knowing it. There is something that resists easy articulation about the fact that we know Ötzi's genome better than we know the genomes of most people who have lived in the last 500 years. We know what he ate in his final hour. We know he had Lyme disease. We know his mother's genetic line is gone from the earth. We know he was killed from behind by someone he may have known. And we do not know his name. We do not know what language he spoke. We do not know what he believed about the sky or the dead or the mountains that ultimately kept him. The things the ice preserves and the things it erases are not the same things that human memory tends to hold. Every generation since his discovery has brought new tools: carbon dating, mitochondrial sequencing, Y chromosome analysis, whole genome sequencing. The 2023 study. In 10 years, there will be new tools, new questions, new revisions. The story of Ötzi is not a story with a fixed answer. It is a story that grows more specific and more complex with every technological generation that returns to him. What is certain is this: 5,300 years ago, a man in his mid-40s climbed into the high passes of the Alps. He had eaten well. He had survived one fight already. He carried a copper axe that marked him as a man of consequence, and someone who wanted him dead followed him into the mountains, or was already waiting there, and shot him from behind with an arrow that found the artery and did not miss. He fell. The cold came. The ice sealed him in. The world moved on without knowing what had been lost or what had been done. Ötzi was found 53 centuries later by two hikers who mistook the world's most important crime scene for a piece of lost equipment. We now know more about him than about almost anyone who has ever lived. We know his diet and his diseases, and the exact angle of the arrow that killed him. We just do not know why. And we do not know who. The killer was never caught. The motive was never recorded. The conflict that ended on that high mountain slope left no other trace in the archaeological record. That is not a mystery resolved. That is a mystery the ice has kept alive for 53 centuries and handed to us, still open, still unanswered, waiting for a technology that does not yet exist to finally close the case. The investigation continues.